just seemed to be the thing I had to learn because I have students working in the areas of writing, public discourse, creative writing and so on. So it just had to be a skill that I knew about because my students needed to know about it, or they already did know about it and were using it, and I felt like I didn't want to fall behind. And also it complements what I was doing anyway, so it kind of was a double bonus of helping me with marketing and promulgating my own work, as well as upskilling myself and being in touch with what my students were doing. I use, well, for various reasons, Twitter. I have my own website. I have 2 Facebook pages. One's a professional one and one's a private one, which I keep quite distinct. I write for The Conversation, which is an online journal or site of debate and discourse. So my Twitter account, I'm kind of, I guess, spreading information or retweeting things that I think will be interesting to people interested in literature news, publishing news, writing news. I subscribe to some international, or I read some international journals that others might not. Then in my Facebook page, which relates to myself as an author, a fiction writer, so my author page very much relates to my latest publication, which happens to be a novel called Hopscotch. And so that will be, and if I think some of the tweets relate to that, I will share them through the Facebook page. So that Facebook page is kind of communicating things that I'm doing. The book's out, I'm signing copies, I've had a launch, I'm speaking to a reading group. Oh look, here's the book in some unusual bookshop. So, encouraging that kind of audience for that particular book and for me as an author. And then in my WordPress, my Jane Messer Author, essentially it's a blog, but you can get information about all my publications and so on. There I'm still doing short pieces of writing, so I try and keep them, around 700 words or less. But they're more content rich than obviously a tweet is. So kind of moderate, like entertaining, but with a kind of some depth of content at the same time, and about issues relating to publishing and writing, and so on. So kind of a bit like the tweet in terms of the range of subject matter, but where I go into some content. And then if I write for The Conversation, which I like to do because they'll throw a topic at me and say, do you want to respond to this? Do you think, is this of interest to you? And then we'll have a quick discussion about how I might approach the topic, and then I'll write it. So then I'm able to republish what I've published in The Conversation. I republish that on my blog. I think it's so much part of what you have to do in my line of work, that it would be more that if you didn't have any social media space, if you didn't have any presence, it's almost like you're not legitimate, you don't exist. That's how I would feel about it. And so, yeah, I can't say, that opportunities have leapt at me because of doing that. I think it would just be there'd be an absence of interaction. With my colleagues, look, I think a lot of them do use social media. In terms of academic colleagues, it really varies. My sense is that the more traditional English studies colleagues use social media a lot less, whereas the colleagues who are more sort of verging towards social studies, cultural studies, creative writing, film studies, children's literature and so on, would be using or are using it more. Certainly colleagues who are writers certainly use social media quite commonly. Again, I think even if you don't like it, you kind of have to use it. I think there's lots of dangers in using social media. I think it eats up huge swathes of valuable time on really what can is just ethereal. A lot of it just ends up being trivia. So we all know that everybody's talking about how difficult it is to be disciplined and so on. Yes, yes. And also not to mistake the kind of activity that is going on in social media sites as real research, because real research tends to be quieter, more reflective, more time consuming, more arduous, where few people know what you're doing for long periods of time until you actually publish something that's substantial. So I'm like very clear in my mind that the work I do, say with The Conversation or on my blog, I think it complements my research, but I don't regard it as research. The other thing that has happened, which is quite sort of fascinating in a way, is when you get yourself into trouble by shooting your mouth off in the Twitter sphere or the blog sphere or wherever. And not that I've never gotten into trouble, but I have watched some people, create a bit of discussion and anger around something they've posted. I don't know if my social media use has affected face-to-face contact. I think, to be honest, I don't think it has, except that I guess I just feel like a normal person because I use it with colleagues who also use it. Keeping abreast of research in my field, I think it's problematic as it is for all of us. It's really hard to do. It's time consuming. There just seems to be more and more research. How do you keep track of it all? I just try and be really selective and efficient about it, and then not worry too much about what I'm not keeping up with. What I love about social media is it does you can see that certain things are trending, or that there's new kinds of discussions taking place, particularly overseas, where I'm interested in kind of writing and publishing initiatives that don't get reported in the daily press here, or where there might be research coming out about it. It might take quite a while. So there you get to kind of follow conversations, and then, trying to be efficient with one's time, get out of conversations that aren't really relevant, and look more deeply at ones that are. But yeah, I think staying abreast of research it's just a continual challenge. Tracking the impact of your research is just, particularly in the humanities, is really, really hard because it's not done via citations. Citations can take years to bubble to the surface, and they're not collected in a very organised way. So yeah, it is quite difficult to do, and so you are, I guess, looking for that more qualitative impact that you're having. So somebody's talking to you about your work, or again, yeah, I guess if you go to a conference or so on, or you receive invitations. And certainly I think the nice thing about the social media is that there's an immediacy in the response where you can kind of think, oh, okay, that generated a bit of interest. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, keep that sort of note that for later. Yeah. Particularly, say, in our broad field of arts and humanities, we are not, curing cancer. We're not stopping wars directly by, working out how to manage drones or whatever. So that issue of why is your work relevant and who does it speak to beyond the university, beyond your student cohort if you're a teacher, or beyond the few hundred people that read the journal that you published in. So social media is kind of an ideal space, if used well, to participate in those wider conversations and to showcase the fact that you can engage in different ways with different audiences. I mean, in a way, we kind of get we spend so much time doing research and writing and sweating over the peer review and getting your article right that you do need to reach out and sort of get out away from your own desk space, as it were, and it can be useful in that way. And piece of advice I would give would be obviously if you want to be a researcher, the focus has to be your research and quality research. But at the same time, it's good to feel that you're still in contact with the world. So finding, perhaps even just deciding that there's one specific kind of social media that most suits your ideal readership or broader audience that you'd like to build up, because it is, we have egos. We want to feel that somebody's listening, that somebody's interested. We want some sort of immediacy. And I think just even for mental health, let alone social good, it can be good to have a bit of gratification because you've said something in say your blog and people liked it, and because it might be 2 years before your research gets published. So in the meantime, it can be gratifying to have that kind of more immediate response. But at the same time, second piece of advice, not to confuse, as it were, the vast world of trivia that social media can be for developing serious serious research skills.